Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet. It's time to grab your cup of coffee or your tea and sit back while we chat about what is happening in the stars above for this weekend. It's an amazing weekend, right? Amazing that the weekend got here so fast after a week that began fairly rockily with the AWS outage. That I couldn't even upload my show to my podcast format. I couldn't finish a lot of the things that I had started because if I was working on a project and it needed to be uploaded somewhere, if that somewhere was impacted by the outage, I couldn't do it. And really, it took until about Wednesday before things really simmered down and I could get back to doing the things that I was doing. So it's been a wonky week, and here we are. You can see how dark it is still at my house, even though it's after 8. We are in the very beginnings of an atmospheric river that promises to deliver several inches of rain and wind. Yay, it's autumn in the Pacific Northwest. It's a time of year where we all turn toward the Scorpio kind of energy, which is about transformation and transformation that digs up the truth. And this weekend, we have a Scorpio and Pluto kind of power test coming through, where the aspect patterns that we are going to be witnessing and experiencing are testing our ability to dig deep and to transform those things that no longer fit. And the weekend's cosmic story digs deep into this concept of truth and power and responsibility because Pluto's involved, right? We have Pluto involved, and we're doing something a little different this morning. And I'm kind of excited about this, and I want to see how it lands with you all. So let me know if you're understanding what I'm talking about. Let me know in the chat, or you can always reach out to me later and let me know how you like this idea. Because every morning I come on air here, I talk about some of the aspects that are happening between the planets, i.e. Today we have a trine occurring between Mercury and Pluto, or the Sun square Pluto and Mercury. And we also have a way to look at this from an energetic standpoint, from a frequency, let's call it, standpoint, if we can tie this to the same aspects that we use in astrology, but applying them to our human design, right? So that is what I'm going to attempt to do this morning. And, in human design, each planet activates a gate, and that gate is associated with a specific astrology sign. So when we look at all of the gates of Scorpio, we can see how the themes in each one of the gates sort of parallel the energy of what's happening in Scorpio. And it's really interesting to see that. And I call this astro design. So when you see me publish a paper out there and it says astro design, that's what I'm talking about. It's the crossroads of astrology in human design, and often the gene keys as well, where we can see in different levels how deep this energy goes, right? It's not enough just to say transformation and truth, the Scorpio and Pluto power test. Well, how is that going to play out, right? How is that going to play out? So when the planets are forming aspects with each other, they're interacting through zodiac signs, and these are relationships between the planets, but they're also communicating across the gates in your human design. They're communicating in a holographic manner through the gene keys of your human design and gene keys hologram. And they link one frequency of consciousness to the other. So we have a consciousness of the sun in Scorpio in the gate 50 today. And then we have it linking with the energy of Pluto in Aquarius in the gate 60. So how do those link up, right? That's what I want to talk about today. And I know it might be a little confusing at first to think about it like this. So just sit back and relax while we talk about this. And please, please feel free to ask questions if you get lost. Now, when we look at the linkages between the planets, right, you usually hear me say things like a trine, a conjunction, or an opposition, or a square, right, or inconjuncts. We have a bunch of different words that link the planets together in a relationship. A trine creates flow. So with the gates, it reinforces or amplifies the gifts of each of the planets involved. If we have a square, which we do this weekend, we have a square and it creates friction, right? In astrology, the squares are friction. And the gates then will challenge each other to evolve from the shadow to the gift. Okay. If we have a conjunction or an opposition, a conjunction fuses the energy of the two gates, i.e., the two planets. An opposition will mirror the energy of the others, right? Offering us awareness through contrast. So we can work with these energies in the same way through the gene keys and in the gates in human design. And in this way, the aspects become intergate harmonics. I wish I could type that. I'm going to type that word in the post here. Oops, that's not how you spell that. Intergate harmonics. And essentially what that means is that, the living conversation between our evolving DNA codes, right, that are entrenched within you, the codes of consciousness, and the planetary archetypes that awaken them. So we're awakening these different codes within us each time that we have some kind of activation or a conversation going on between the planets. Now, this weekend, we're seeing that conversation unfold between several different gates, and I'm going to take them individually, so don't get too lost. But it's unfolding between the gates 50, the gate of nurturing, the gate 60, the gate of conservation, the gate 43, which is called insight, the gate 14, which is called distribution. No, that's 45. The gate 14 is called power. And the energy of the gate 62, this is where Jupiter is, which is called the details. So we're bridging the awareness, empowerment, structure, and expression of the planets in signs and the gates in your body graph or your human design chart and the gene keys, right? The deeper aspects of your DNA. Let me know right now if I've lost anybody. Good. In the meantime, I'll just say good morning to everybody. Good morning to, let's see who was out here first this morning. I think it's Nahid. Good morning. And she says, I have the Scorpio-Pluto in the 8th house. Yikes, lots of transformational energy going on there. Good morning. Happy, windy, blustery PNW Friday, Joan Durchie says. And you're right on the coast, so you're getting the brunt of it. Teddy Hickox, good morning. And Patty, good morning to you. Teddy says, really love the no headphones. Seeing more of your radiant face. Oh my gosh, thank you. I just hope you guys can hear me okay. And, the heaters are going to come on. There's nothing I can do about that. Good morning, Narges. It's good to see you with us this morning. And Christine, hello to you out there. Tom, good morning. Hi, Diwali. Victory to the light. Astro Design fam. I love that. And Nargis says, feeling that grand water trine in all. And darn it, I left my chart for this morning on my scanner, but I'll be showing that to everybody here in a minute. And all right, anybody else out there? Christine says she has gate 50 at Jupiter in Scorpio. So you have growth in your life and expansion in your life and wisdom gathering in your life through this energy of nurturing and appropriate nurturing, right? The nurturing that is about creating responsibility and making sure people in your life are responsible for themselves, having taught them maybe from your point of view, the values and how to get along as part of a tribe. And anybody, I don't see questions. So, okay. Let's proceed, right? We'll proceed one step at a time here. Let's begin with the biggest energy of the week, of the weekend. And that's the sun in Scorpio squaring Pluto in Aquarius. While Pluto is still out of bounds, right? Pluto is in that out of bounds character, which means he's a little bit unchained. He's a lot wild. He's a lot extreme, perhaps. So the energy then of transformation, which is the hallmark of Pluto, can be a little bit off the wall, right? Could be a little bit out there. So this particular square is a power calibration moment for each one of us, both personally, but also collectively. As the sun in Scorpio really says, I want to know what's real. I want to merge, I want to transform, and I want to see behind the veil. I want to see what's behind I want to tear it apart and see what's, making it tick. And then Pluto in Aquarius answers that with it's time to evolve how we use power, not as control, but as a collective empowerment. So there's this collective empowerment going on through this transformative energy of Scorpio that's digging to the depths, digging up what's behind the scenes, the dirt, if you will, and bringing it to the light. Now, because Pluto is out of bounds, the confrontation can feel extreme in some respects, either personally or collectively. So when you see in the outer world what's happening, it could have this it's approaching the edge of falling off the cliff kind of energy where it's like, never have I ever in my life seen this kind of thing. You might see control dynamics, manipulation dynamics, maybe old trauma patterns that are surfacing in the collective, but also within yourself. But the invitation of Scorpio is self-mastery through awareness. And that's what we're after, even in the different combinations of relationships that the planets can have. It's not dominance, right? And dominance has been what's gone on this planet. It's what has evolved or devolved even through the centuries that we have been working this kind of energy, maybe even since about the early 1700s, late 1600s, when we began the Industrial Revolution times. Now, if we're going to look at the sun square Pluto, let's now look at it through the template of the gates in your human design. Let me see if I can bring up that chart first. Sharing my screen with my chart presentation, which I found this morning, luckily, happily. So what you're seeing here is a chart. Let me go back to StreamYard and make sure you are seeing it. Yes, you are. So what you're looking at is the human design body graph. And I've got several pieces of information here. So, it's a little confusing at first, but what I want you to call your attention to is the spleen center down here on the lower left of the screen, where you see the gate 50 at this point here and in blue. So I'm highlighting it in blue because it's really not connected to the gate 27. That's an energy we're also going to be talking about this morning, but let's just talk about the gate 50. This is where the sun is shining through, right? And it's shining through this energy of nurturing. And it's a spleen center gate that we also think about as values and integrity and the moral background or backbone, more appropriately, of a community, of a nation, of a family, of a tribe, however you want to, cut it. It's the moral backbone that describes how that tribe or community will work together, get along, and kind of the rules of the road, if you will. Now, in Gene Keys, this particular energy of the sun at the gate 50 evolves from the shadow of corruption to the gift of equilibrium and on up to the city of harmony. So we're walking a journey from corruption to harmony through creating equilibrium. Now, the shadow of corruption, as I've said many times, isn't about the kind that we think of as, political corruption or, corrupt politicians. It's not that. It's the misinterpretation of the codes, right? The misinterpretation, or where I just experienced it this week, where suddenly my printer not suddenly, because it's been happening for a while, where my printer couldn't communicate with the internet any longer. There was a corruption in the code between the two entities. And unfortunately for me, the printer was older and it just wasn't capable of that kind of cohesiveness or equilibrium. So I had to replace it, right? In our own DNA, we have times where a code gets corrupted in the DNA, and it can create a disease state. It can create something that, an illness that then hopefully the DNA can course correct, right? So the corruption is something where the code is misinterpreted. And in this particular gate, this idea of nurturing, the gate 50 and nurturing, gets corrupted either through overly dominating or controlling something or someone, or through abdicating your responsibility for any kind of nurturing of the people in your lives or of your relationships in your life. Now, when we look at Pluto then in Aquarius, now they're in a square. The sun in Scorpio is squaring Pluto in Aquarius. That means the sun in gate 50 is squaring or in tension with Pluto in the gate 60, which is called the gate of conservation. So that is a root center gate. Here's 60 down here at the bottom. This is a root center gate. It's highlighted in that light blue. And it's a gate of limitation and structure and the pressure to innovate within boundaries, right? You have to have the container. Remember the container that holds the energies for us to be able to focus on something. And the gene key here moves from limitation to realism to justice. An interesting series there. Now, the square between the two here pushes the collective to reconcile our values in the gate 50 with the systems in the gate 60, and how we uphold ethics while reshaping the frameworks that govern us, right? How do we uphold ethics while everything is being destroyed around us right now, right? That's a big question in pretty much all of the nations around the world right now that are in some kind of flux or some kind of big change. How do we uphold that morality, that ethical and integrity that we need in order to establish new forms, right? New structures. And because Pluto is still out of bounds, the drive for reform can really feel extreme. It feels like sometimes we are making the most extreme changes or the most extreme choices that really don't jive with this idea of integrity, right? And we could pick any number of things that are going on in the USA, and I bet in your own countries, Canada, England, and Germany, and I have people from all over, I bet in your own countries you could find that same theme coming up. Where is it that we need measured transformation? Not this extremity, but measured. And it's an evolution then that honors stability and moral clarity, right? Before we go all out and institute AI all over the place, do we have any boundaries in place? Which we don't. We really don't, right? So that opens us up then for an issue, instability rather than stability. So, if we bring this in personally, ask yourself then where do your principles need to guide the reforms that you might be making in your own life, right? When you're in flux, when you're changing, you usually have some form of ethics that you're following, your own integrity that you're following. Are your limits protecting growth or preventing it? Right? Are you stifling yourself by these maybe contrived boundaries or limitations? Or is it so loose because you have no boundaries or limitations that you're all over the place, right? That you're not really able to grow in a way that's sustainable. And then asking yourself, how can you restore equilibrium and pressure for radical change? How can you have that equilibrium while big things are changing, right? Okay. Any questions about that? How's everybody feeling this energy, by the way? Um, because it's big. this is These are ongoing themes. Every morning when I sit down to do my broadcast, I'm thinking about, what are the words that I want to use to describe, and constantly it's about transformation. Constantly it's about truth. Constantly it's about change, because it's just what is big for all of us at this moment in time. So, anyway, let me know how you're feeling about this as we go on to Mercury in Scorpio in a trine to Jupiter in Cancer. Now, this is also happening today. Now, as we move into this lovely trine, remember the trines are positive. By the way, I do have the chart today to show you of the astrology, and I've highlighted that beautiful green triangle there, which represents the grand water trine that we are in the midst of, which means, we have this lovely flow that is set up between Jupiter in Cancer, water, the energy of nurturing and home and family and our foundations, and the planet Saturn and Neptune, now both again in Pisces, and setting up the energy of imagination, the flow of spirit through us, and the ability to hopefully now look back over the course of time that Neptune and Saturn both were in Pisces, and to see what it is that we can ground in from the spiritual realm in our own lives. And then as well, scorpionic energy, the energy of Mercury and the black moon Lilith and Mars, that are all fairly close together at this point in the transit, at the other point of this grand trine. And grand trines in water are emotional. So there's a lot of emotion, and it's flowing easily. And yet sometimes the trines can cause us to, not really try very hard to change what needs to be changed in our lives, because it's flowing so easily, right? So we can get lost in the ease and the flow. And hopefully the square from the sun and Pluto will make it so that we actually take a look at what is of emotional importance in our lives, and how is it that we are becoming more intuitive, and how is it that we are becoming more integrous as time goes on. Now, if the Sun-Pluto square stirred something deep within you, and by the way, this orange line right here is the Sun-Pluto square, and the Sun in the sign of Scorpio, Pluto in Aquarius, those energies they have tension between them, right? So if the Sun and Pluto square stirs something deep within you, then the Mercury-Jupiter trine comes in as the wise counselors for how to get through this time or this energy. And this aspect is designed to expand our emotional intelligence. And we need this because, remember, guys, we are headed to a human design evolutionary leap in 2027, where the energy of emotions becomes uber important, right? We have to move out of the reactive energies of emotions, right, as we are this moment, and move into the responsive energies of the solar plexus in the human design template. So emotional intelligence is a big thing. And the more that you understand your emotions, the more you understand your feelings and how you're using those feelings and expressing them in the world, the better this evolutionary leap occurs for you, right? Because eventually what happens here is that we begin to use the emotional center as an awareness center. Right now, it's an engine, it's a motor. And that motor means that we're taking action on our emotions, right? And as we know, emotions are up and down. So when emotional energy is up and down, it leaves it wide open for us to react to things around us, or to people and circumstances around us. When this evolutionary leap takes place, we begin to really see how our emotions guide us as awareness to what feels good to us and will help us determine, well, is this the right conversation? Is this the right opportunity? Is this the right relationship? Is this the right job? Is this the right place to live? Right? It really becomes about how we feel. If we're feeling pulled towards something, or if we're feeling good about something, then that will be used as the awareness that, yes, that's the right thing for me to do, or the right person for me to be with. Versus right now, where we keep using emotion as that explosive reaction to things that are happening around us. Now, it doesn't mean that you're dumbing down your emotions either, right? It doesn't mean that you're not going to be feeling. It just means that we're going to be using this in a different way. So the energy of Mercury to Jupiter in this trine today can really help us articulate our complex feelings to find meaning in our experiences. And I'm just going to share, sometimes I TMI, but I'm going to share this anyway. This week, I have been in a series of coaching sessions, let's say, on it was really on business, more business related than astrological or anything. And it was my turn to share with the group what I had been working on. And you got to remember, these are business women, not necessarily spiritual. They're not astrologers. I'm the only astrologer, right, of the group. And I found myself, having to share some, pretty interesting information, I would say, for them. And then their reactions or their responses were not what I expected. And I started to get defensive. It was hysterical. Inside, I'm almost laughing at myself because, the whole idea of sharing is to get feedback. And I found myself emotionally reactive to the feedback. It was weird. But luckily, I noticed it. And as my voice started to rise in response to what the feedback was, I was like, okay, back off, right? Back off. And this is exactly the things that we're going to have to do, right? It doesn't mean you don't feel the feels. I felt the defensiveness. I felt the rush to defend myself and defend my words and my use of the languaging, the way that I had put it together in the face of their criticism. But the criticism wasn't the problem. The problem was within me because this was a different format. It was me asking for this kind of constructive criticism. So this is what we have to do. We have to be able to catch ourselves. We have to be able to use that emotional intelligence and to, breathe before we have the reaction. Right? I could have reacted by saying, none of you understand me. None of you understand my work. So I can't trust anything that you say, right? Or any of your feedback, which is what I wanted to do. But instead I listened, right? Listened to the emotion. So you too, this weekend, today, you might find yourself in some kind of meaningful conversation where maybe it feels healing. Maybe it feels revealing. Maybe it feels affirming, but it could also feel triggering, right? And the quest that you're on is to understand the emotion before you react to it, to respond, like take a breath. What is it that you're seeing in this conversation that's triggering you or revealing? What is it revealing to you? Okay. So that is the Mercury in Scorpio trine Jupiter, this beautiful water trine. I think you guys can still see it on my screen. Let me make this bigger so I can see it now. All right. Now, no, I don't want this one now. Hold on. Sorry. Now I want to go to the human design of all of this. So let me remove myself. Let's remove this one. Okay, there we go. Now I want to share the human design chart again. Oh, Lordy. There we go. Okay. So Mercury is right now sitting at the gate 43, which you can see up here in the Ajna Center. And then we have Jupiter sitting at the gate 62 on the throat center. So these are gates that are attaching the ajna to the throat or the throat to the ajna, but they're not in the same channel, right? So they're different energies. Now, the gate 43 that Mercury is sitting at is called the gate of insight, and it brings breakthrough energy, breakthrough insight through breakthrough thinking, right? And intuitive knowing. It is an energy that is often ahead of its time. Insights or ideas that are far ahead of the crowd, in the moment. And its gene key unfolds through the energy of deafness, la la la, can't hear you, through to insight, and then up to ecstasy. So it is the journey of deafness to epiphany, not ecstasy. Oh, I should get my glasses adjusted. It is the journey from deafness to epiphany through insight. Okay. Now, Jupiter in the gate 62, we talked about this a bit a couple of weeks ago when he first moved into this particular gate. This is called the gate of details. And on the throat center, it offers precision in expression. And it is the journey in the gene keys from intellect through to precision to impeccability. So it's actually the journey from intellect to impeccability through precision, being very careful about choosing your words wisely. Now, the trine between Mercury at the gate 43 and Jupiter at the gate 62 opens a channel of articulation, between our intuition and our intellect. Even though now I used the word channel, but I don't mean that there's an actual channel in human design that's connected here. It's now what was inner knowing through the gate 43 Mercury now finds clear, grounded words in Jupiter at the gate 62. So it's a day today when sudden realizations can be shared in a way that's inspiring people to understand something deeper, right? Maybe inspiring our trust in our insights, and maybe anchoring them in the details and the clarity of what it is that we see in that moment. So, asking yourself questions from this particular point of view, like what insight is seeking its voice through you, right? What's niggling down here in your inner self that is needing to be expressed, but interestingly enough, we have to wait for the right timing. And the right timing always, 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 when the throat is involved, is with an invitation, right? When the gate 43 Mercury says, I've had this stellar idea. Can I share it with you? And people say yes. And then you've got the yes, the go ahead to share. And if they are like looking at you skeptically, you say, okay, I'll keep my idea. I'll share it with you all when you're ready. And with the gate 62, it's already on the throat center. So waiting, Jupiter says to wait until you have all those details in place before you share. So we are really asking this question about how do we turn precision into inspiration and then into wisdom that others can actually grasp. And interesting, because I find myself this morning wanting to make sure that you are understanding what I'm trying to say here, because we're kind of blending so many things. So let me take a moment and see what the chat is going on out here. Good morning, J-Lo. I didn't see you out there yet. It's good to have you. She says, I came in just like MT 50.5 Uranus out of nowhere. There you go. OMG, my printer did the same thing, and mine is about a year old only. Whoa, well, my printer I bought in 2011, so it was 14 years old. It's still such a great printer, but it just refused to print in color. And how do I look at a chart in black and white? I just can't, right? I need the color. Christine, planned obsolescence, especially with HP printers. Yeah. In fact, they were trying to get me to join in with their 2-year program where every 2 years you could, recycle your printer. And when I was looking at the fine print, that printer would have cost me about $580 at the end of 2 years. And I went, nope. Called up Best Buy. Well, actually, I went to my Instacart app and asked Best Buy to deliver it. And sure enough, it came yesterday, and I set it up yesterday morning. It came yesterday or the night before. Amazon just announced they will be replacing over 600,000 workers with robots. I don't know that that's true or not. I haven't seen that yet, but this is perhaps one of the technological things that we've got to look at as humans. What do those 600,000 people do, right? If that's true. Asa, good morning. It's good to have you with us. Natasha, nice to see you. She said, I too had a moment this week of seeing myself as I was, then moved into interaction. Then we're going to continue this conversation later. It was a wow gifted moment. You know, it really is when we can catch ourselves now. And I would encourage all of you to practice this. You know, when you are triggered by something, anything, right? Something you read on Facebook or something that somebody says, you know, stop before you react and ask yourself, what is it that you are responding to? Right? Like in my case, I was responding to what I felt like was criticism from people that I maybe didn't want to hear. I don't know. I haven't, really thought too much about that, but it's a pattern for sure of defensiveness in the face of criticism. So I had to look at it. So, look at that. Christine, 43.5 Mars in Capricorn design side. On the design side, the gate 43 would be about, your inner world, how your insights are very profound and how it is that they need to be spoken in the right timing with the right people in the right way. So interesting, right? Tom, opt out, do not comply. J-Lo, kind of interesting. They would do the same and are able to control the things that we print. It's all so very interesting right now, isn't it? Right? All the decisions that we make that might be taking the decision out of our hands, right? We're kind of abdicating in some way our responsibility for certain things. I'm all for technology making things easier. There's nothing, I'm against that way. But I don't know. I think sometimes these roads are really tricky and we have to watch out what we're doing here. Okay, I don't see any questions. So you guys are getting this, right? This idea of combining astrology. I think you get the idea of astrology with the human design gates, but now we're taking it to the level of the relationships, the aspects between the planets and applying it in a human design way. Okay, awesome. Now let's look at Mercury and Scorpio also trining Saturn. So again, taking a look at this beautiful trine that we have, it's not just, Jupiter and Mercury, it's Mercury and Saturn. And also Saturn, I should have highlighted Neptune here because Neptune very close to Saturn at 29 degrees right now of Pisces and making, its way into what will be, a further kind of excavation, if you will, of our connection to spirit or to source. And how is it that we can live from that higher self, from that higher love, divine source energy. And Saturn, of course, involved here is, well, how do I make it real? How do I bring it down into everyday life? So this occurs on Saturday. It forms this trine, Mercury does, with Saturn in Pisces. And after today's emotional insight from Mercury in the trine to Jupiter, maybe this aspect grounds it in some kind of practical way for us, right? Into practical wisdom and everyday ability to live it. Maybe you find yourself better able to commit to an idea, maybe a healing path or a new emotional boundary that you've had to be, doing for a while. Maybe grounding in from a spiritual perspective into an emotional connection that then becomes more mature in its expression. Right? This is about really emotional maturity because Saturn is a planet that takes us into the mature level of expression. So it might be about compassionate discipline, not repression of those energies, those emotions, but being disciplined in how you express them. You're going to take them in. You're going to take in emotion, right? It's a grand water trine. There is emotion out there to be had. But what do you do with it, right? How do you express it? That's the key, right? How am I going to express this emotion? Now, by the time tomorrow, when we get to this aspect with Mercury and Saturn, Mercury's moved out of the gate 43 and into the gate 14. So we have this little different energy associated with Mercury now. And the gate 14 is harmonizing with Saturn at the gate 36. In a way, this is really good because we have chaos associated with the gate 36. And I want to look up 14 because I can't remember right off I want to make sure the word is correct because I like correct words. And it's creation. Gosh, creation energy. This is actually a money gate as well. So Mercury in a money gate, the gate 14. So we have this gate of prosperity. In the highest expression of the gene keys, this is bounteousness. So we have, Mercury in the gate 14 that talks about prosperity and the right use of energy that leads to abundance. Mercury, the messenger, bringing this message, right? And in the gene keys, what we see is the lowest expression in this gate is compromise, not the good kind of compromise either. And it leads to competence in the gift expression and bounteousness in the siddhi. So we're walking a journey here from compromise to bounteousness through competence, right? And I mean, we could do a whole hour just on this particular gene key. Here, Mercury carries this energy of ideas that can empower, resource, or uplift our experience of abundance on the planet. And it can also, in the shadow, lead us to compromise our values or compromise those very gifts. Now, in the trine to Saturn in Pisces, which is currently in the gate 36, called the gate of exploration, it is this energy that steadies our compassionate expression of wisdom, meaning that everything is brought to the forward, to conversation, to living through compassion. And yet the 36 energy can be very emotionally volatile. So this is using your creative energy wisely. This is using your words responsibly. This is purposeful energy, right? This aspect between Mercury and Saturn in the gates 14 and 36 stabilizes the emotional intensity of the week, right? I really believe this one really helps. Grounding ideas into tangible service, to tangible forms, helping us to be able to take that breath first before we react to something. So, for the weekend, ask yourself where you can invest your energy in the greatest collective good or for the greatest collective good. And I don't mean collective as in, well, it could be for the whole world. It could be for your family. It could be for your tribe or community. How can you invest your energy in a way that is going to do the greatest good? And how might disciplined compassion turn inspiration into real contribution? The sacral center being involved with the gate 14, and I've got the wrong chart up here. You really need to see this in the human design. Let me share that screen real quickly here so that you can see where this sits, right? So we have the gate 36 here on the solar plexus or the emotional center. So the lower right center. And then we have the gate 14 on the sacral center, and it moves up to the identity center. So it's moving upward into the expression from soul, the soul level. And, interesting here too, because it seems like, we are needing to combine integrity because those were transits that we're having today, with our competence, with how is it that we want to live correctly in our world without compromising our values, that leads us all to this level of bounty, which is transformative in nature, right? When everybody has plenty, there isn't a sense of separation. There isn't this sense of I can't live, I can't survive. So very interesting to bring and meld all of these energies together. When we're looking at what was going on yesterday, I think it was yesterday afternoon, I saw a news story come through about Trump signaling that it was going to be okay to start drilling in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for oil. That has been a protected environment for a very long time. And you have to wonder, right? Where is it that we are compromising our values as a nation? Because we obviously, for the very longest time, have valued beauty, the resources that we have in the natural wonders of the world, or the environments that we have. And now you just think about the damage that can be done by having to bring in oil rigs and having to bring in heavy equipment and trucks traipsing all over the tundra and upsetting the animals and the balance of nature there. We're compromising our values for what would seem to be about lowering oil prices, right? Creating abundance, but upside down in a very negative way by not adhering to our values. So I don't know how this one is going to fly. I don't know what judges might step up and block this, but I feel like it's an ugly chapter, another ugly chapter in this whole experience that we're having right now, that our environments are so cheaply thought of. It just makes me almost ill inside. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I don't think that comes from any one party politically. I just think as human beings, we're here to be good stewards of the environment. And that is a big, bad one for all of us, I think. All right. Yeah, and he destroyed the White House without permission. Why do we need a 90,000 square foot ballroom? There are people out there not being able to go to the doctors because he's taking away Medicaid. There are people out, or it's not happened yet, but it will be happening, presumably. There are people out there that can't afford to feed themselves, but you're going to spend money on this. It's upside down. It's just upside down. I feel like, Stranger Things. We're living in the upside down. Okay, let's go on, shall we? Because we also have a new human design week dawning on us tomorrow from October 25th to 30th. We are moving into the sun in gate 28, the gate of adventure, or is it challenge, right? There's a split in this particular gate, while Earth will be moving into the gate 27, the gate of accountability, which is a gate that is on the sacral center that speaks to nourishment. How do we get nourished, and how do we nourish each other? So, or how do we get nourished by others, or by, literally food and all of that. So I'm going to share my screen again to the human design so you can see where this is located. It is a gate in the spleen center that the sun will be sitting at. Here is the gate 28. I put it in pink so you could see that it is an energy that is upcoming. And gate 28 is in the hub of instinct and survival awareness. That's what happens in the spleen center. And this is where we meet one of humanity's most primal fears. It is the fear of death. It is the fear of purposelessness. It is the fear of the void, of nothingness, of no meaning. So this particular fear is pervasive, and it causes so many different problems, right? If we think of life as the adventure, this is why this has two energies, right? Adventure and challenge. So we're challenged to find meaning, but sometimes to find that meaning, we go out in the world and we take risks, right? We become daredevils, or we, just don't try to do anything because it has no purpose, it has no meaning. And it's the anxiety here in this gate that life might not matter, that we could struggle and still fail, and that, we leave the planet without a trace, right? We were never here. So it's very deep in our psyches, this particular energy. Now, from the gene key perspective, the sun at the gate 28, or gene key 28, it leads us from purposelessness to totality to, and you're going to love this word, immortality, right? So it's the journey from purposelessness to immortality through totality. Now, this is one that, we have to really think about, because in the shadow of this energy, and remember, this is, we're in the shadow season. So these are up in our faces, and this one will start being up in your face tomorrow. In the shadow, we can feel aimless. We can feel like we're just wandering in the desert. We can feel resistant to anything. We can start fighting life's challenges instead of embracing them. In the gift level of this gate 28, down here on the spleen, we realize that the only way to truly live is to fully engage in life, to fully say yes to the adventure of existence, right? That every moment of this life is a gift. Every moment of this life is an adventure, even if it is, taking us into some kind of challenge in this particular moment. At the Siddhic level, the highest level, we awaken to immortality, not as endless life, but as consciousness unafraid of death, right? Realizing that the energy of you goes on, right? Remember, in physics, energy cannot be destroyed. It can only be transformed. So the transformation from, your energetic self, the part of you that animates the body that you're in, is not one of death and finality. It's one of a consciousness shift, right? A consciousness change. So under this transit of the sun at gate 28, you're invited to ask, am I living fully or merely surviving? And then where am I avoiding risk, uncertainty, or the call of adventure because of fear? What's holding me back? And astrologically, with the sun in Scorpio, this gate's energy resonates very deeply with that Scorpio energy, right? Scorpio already teaches that death is a transformation, that endings are simply portals or gateways to renewal, to rebirth. Now, together, Scorpio plus the gate 28 offers this potent reminder to us that the mystery of life and death is not to be conquered, but to be embraced, to be brought in as an experience, and to experience it then as the heartbeat of evolution, right? So use this week to face those fears, to the ones that just keep you half alive, half engaged. Lean into the unknown instead of resisting it and pushing back. Trust that your purpose will reveal itself through your courage to participate fully in your life, right? Being half-heartedly engaged here isn't going to work, right? You need to be fully engaged. Now, let's look at the earth, because the earth is always going to be the balance point. It's going to be the grounding point. When the sun pulls us into that existential challenge in the gate 28, the earth, the point of grounding for all of us, anchors us into the gate 27, right here on the sacral center, also in pink, called accountability. Now, this gate is about nourishment. This gate is about responsibility and the right use of care. In this gene key, the 27 is about turning selfishness into altruism and upward to selflessness. So we're walking the path of selfishness to selflessness through altruism. So the shadow in this gate expresses as giving too much or as not giving at all, right? It's the extremes. It's distorted care that maybe is rooted in guilt. Remember the gate 50 on the other side that we just are coming through today is about over mothering, over giving. It can be fear of failing in your responsibility to your family or tribe or community, so you do too much, right? And the shadow on the other side says, distorted care that's rooted in your guilt, right? It's distorted. What you needed to be doing is by living through your values and teaching those values to allow those in your community or your family to take their wings and fly, right? And risk their own failures and risk their own traumas and dramas. Okay. The gift is altruism, which is caring that honors both self and other, right? It's a balanced equation. In the city, selflessness is about pure service through love. This is very loving energy in its highest. It is the highest expression, perhaps, of the mother energy that both loves you enough to teach you and then loves you enough to hold you accountable for your decisions. So while the sun is asking, what gives my life meaning? The earth responds, meaning grows where you care for life itself. They work together. So your purpose isn't found in escaping the human experience. It never has been, right? It's born through compassion. It's born through accountability and the willingness to tend to what really matters, what's most important. So there's this polarity here, this challenge plus care that we have to bring into our experience. And together these gates form, this dynamic polarity. And the gate 28 tests your will to live meaningfully, to really find meaning in all the experiences, while the gate 27 grounds you in service and sustenance and the ability to, as the sacral would, keep sustainability in focus. It's the dance then between personal purpose and collective care. How do we balance that? And between the hero's journey, your quests that you're on, and the healer's heart, because if you don't risk anything, there's no healing, right? If you face your fears but forget compassion, the journey becomes hollow. It has no meaning. If you nurture others but avoid your own adventures, then the light dims. Your light dims. When both are in balance, then, life becomes sacred. And every challenge is infused with love. Every act of care is a step toward immortality, right? Using those gene key words. So reflection and integration for this particular upcoming week. By the way, this starts tomorrow, again, the 25th through the 30th, taking us almost up to the end of October. Embrace challenge. Don't run from it. Don't avoid what feels hard this week. Every obstacle hides an initiation for you into a deeper purpose. Practice courageous care. Offer help, but also set boundaries, right? You can offer to give somebody some guidance or some, help, but make sure they know and when does that help end. True nourishment honors both the giver and the receiver. So it is a balanced conversation. Contemplate mortality. Reflect on what death really means for you. What are you really afraid of? If you ask with that, you are, able to see deeper into what is ending and what's beginning and what's eternal and what's worth seeking and what's not worth seeking. And then act with totality, right? Be fully present in your life. Be fully present in your body. Be fully present in your divineness, right? Be that divine human. Whether you're working or resting or connecting, give your whole self to the moment. That's what this week will remind us of. So as the sun lights up the gate 28 and the earth the gate 27, we're reminded that life's meaning is discovered through the courage to face the challenges, to face death, to face your mortality, and the compassion to nurture life as the time between birth and death, right? You're living life. All right. So just to review this weekend's gates, the gate 50, the sun in the gate 50, squaring Pluto in the gate 60, values, reshape, structure. Mercury in the gate 43, insight, that is trining Jupiter in the gate 62 details, insight finds its precise voice, its precise expression. Mercury in the gate 14, trining Saturn in the gate 36. Abundance meets maturity, the mature use of your resources, right? Of your money, your time, your energy. And then the Sun and Earth combination 28 and 27, purpose through challenge and compassion through accountability. It's a great week. It's a great weekend. All right, questions before we get going here. Karen, good morning. I'm so in that place of tired of the next risk. So live in the moment, Karen. Live in this moment, right here, right now, in that moment that you are taking that challenge when you're evaluating what comes next. Be very present to it. I'm here for it, J-Lo says, my life's work and evolution. Nice. Christine 28.3 is Neptune in Scorpio. Design 28 North Node in Scorpio. 28.3 Neptune Scorpio. Yowza, yowza, yowza. Yeah, lots of 28 energy. And the younger generations came, with Neptune in gate 28. And some of them, I think, even, are living that out because, we, and this is just an aside that I've noticed going on, they don't hold the same work values or work ethics that we have as older generations. Not that all of you are older out there listening, but one way that we see, this gate 28 is that particular generation are, I guess you would call them millennials, looking and searching for a deeper meaning to life, that it can't all be about spending 30 years at the same job, doing the same thing every day, day in and day out, that there's got to be a bigger meaning. And that's hard to understand for the older people who are like, yeah, get a job and, earn a living and you work every day, you do all the things, right? And they're totally a different mindset. So that is it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I will be here on Monday, where we'll talk about what to expect in the upcoming week. Can you guys see that little fruit fly flying around here in front of me? I don't know how you got in here, but okay. And then next week, of course, we'll also have our Wednesday show where Tam and I will break down what is coming up for November. November is a month that has a lot of movement in it. Planets changing direction, planets changing signs. Should be an interesting month. And then, of course, I'll also be here next Friday. All right, that's it for now. Thanks, everybody. Bye.